Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and for this hour I will tell you some more personal stories than I have told in the past about my experience of walking in. Because I have stated in the past that I am a galactic walk-in, haven't shared all of the details of that, although I have shared it in an extensive YouTube video, which you can of course check out. It's called Aurora's Story Walking In. So today is a significant date. It is October 8th, 2015. It is the 14th anniversary of the day of my walking into this physical body. So I originally came in on October 8th of 2001. Chronologically, I have been here in this body for 14 years. It's really quite something. So many times when I would tell people that I'm a walk-in and describe what that is, they would ask me about my birthday. And usually I have celebrated my birthday as the chronological date of the physical birth of this body when it entered into physical reality, which is July 26th. However, many people pointed out that my real birthday would be October 8th, the day that I walked into this body as consciousness, that I, the person speaking to you, came into this body. And this is a challenge because for many years, I did not celebrate October 8th as a really positive, wonderful day, even though it is the day that I came into this realm, and it is the day that I created the flying rainbow lasagna. The events surrounding that were very traumatic. It was a very difficult birth. So first of all, when I first came here into this world, I was not articulate as I am now. I was not able to access words and speak and describe my experience, both the experience of walking in as consciousness and my day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience of what I was perceiving. I was not able to effectively share that through words, although as soon as I came into this body, I was immediately expressing myself through drawing and through visual arts. In fact, I used to use, and I still use, the activity of drawing and making artwork in order to calm and center and ground myself in this reality. Because for the first 18 months or so that I was in this body, it was very difficult for my consciousness to even be integrated into this neurology, just enough for basic existence. I didn't understand where I was or the rules of where I was. I kept trying to just eat sunlight. And I didn't understand why my body didn't feel healthy, why it felt weak and was very small and skinny, and why I didn't feel full of vitality and energy. I didn't understand the rules of where I was. So I can also go a little bit into when I've described my experience, sometimes people jokingly ask, what planet are you from? Or, more seriously ask, where are you from? These are excellent questions. They're questions about the trajectory of my consciousness journey. So, like any person that has been born, it can be difficult at first to remember where you were prior to birth, because you really, when you're here in the physical realm, you have to have your total awareness and consciousness focused on this body, this moment now, this lifetime in the present that you are experiencing. Your mind, or your perception and awareness, I have stated in the past, is analogous to the needle on the record of an old-fashioned analog record with grooves in it. And your awareness is that point of consciousness that is focusing on one particular timeline, on one particular life experience. So when I first came into this body, it was necessary for me to concentrate very hard on being here and on being in this body. And it was very disruptive when I had to do anything like move around and try to do ordinary tasks. I found that to be overwhelming in the senses and difficult for me to understand and process what I was seeing. And also, there was a lot of neurological damage of the body that I came in to inhabit. So I'll also give this analogy. Coming into this body, consciousness coming into inhabit this physical body, is very similar to moving into a house that has had a house fire, and some of the rooms are burned and gutted. So the events that killed the former occupant of this body left neurological damage. I mean, you don't just die of nothing, you die of something. So I'll get into this a little bit now, and then you'll understand more about why October 8th. I am reclaiming it as a day to celebrate, and I'm sharing this story very openly. This isn't the first time that I've spoken about this. That really the previous occupant of this body was murdered. She was killed by a form of psychic attack. And the attack it happened on a non-physical level, on the level of pure energy, pure consciousness, or spirituality, and also on a semi-physical level, the level of what we would say electromagnetism, actual physical apparatuses being used as an energy weapon, and also on the level of the physical. So on the level of the physical, some of the blood vessels of the brain of this body were harmed and were made not to function, and so some areas of the brain did not get the vital nutrients that they need to stay alive. On a neurological level, energy was sent to overwhelm some neurological centers. You could say it is similar to putting too much electrical current through, physical copper wires and causing those wires to melt or fuse, or circuit breakers to fuse, or short circuits to occur. So there was starvation of oxygen and nutrients. There was neurological overload, and also the consciousness or spiritual attack that happened was like a series of events that one can experience in the physical reality, but it occurred in hyperspace, in the non-physical reality. So for anyone who has ever had experiences of astral travel or lucid dreaming, or if you've ever had a near-death experience, that's the realm that I'm speaking about where it all happened. And I won't go into all of the details of what happened, but it was an attack by malevolent, satanic forces that literally were intending to kill the previous occupant and kill the body and make it no longer habitable. So one of the things that I wanted to speak about, it's an excellent question of, well, Aurora, if the body was killed, how can you be here? And part of my experience, first of all, was to create the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as an alternative to death. One of the other experiences that I had, so I mentioned that there was neurological damage, a lot of neurological disruption that caused the physical container to no longer be able to contain consciousness. So for me to occupy this container as Aurora, it was necessary for the cells of the body to be held together with we could call it a network of consciousness. It literally felt to me like I was clothed and interwoven with a fine white thread of pure awareness, of pure divine consciousness that connected every single nucleus of the cells of my physical body to the source, and wrapped me and cocooned me in a white light network of protection that if that had not happened, the cells of the body would have decomposed as bodies do when consciousness leaves. However, this stellar grid or network was placed on the physical container so that I could occupy it as consciousness. And that network, it held me together for a very long time, because otherwise the body processes would not have been able to be upheld. I'm talking about at least 18 months. So that initial 18 months when I came into this consciousness, I as consciousness came into this body rather, there was still a lot of overlap. There was a lot of emotional residue from the person who lived in this body for the first 27 years of its corporeal existence. That's why I say it's like moving into a house And the house has already been furnished. It has other people's belongings in it, other people's books on the bookshelf. And there was a house fire, and the previous occupants have moved out. That is what it was like for me to move into this consciousness container. So here's more interesting personal information. I did not have math skills. I was numerically illiterate. Due to the neurological damage that happened, the understanding of numbers and the symbolic language of numbers was disrupted in this body. And when I came in, I didn't understand numbers. I will tell you that a 3 and an 8 and a 9 were indistinguishable to me. They all looked vaguely the same, kind of in the same way as if you are an English speaker and you were to look at the writing of people from Japan. The individual characters, you might say, well, they all just look like some black slashy marks. And I can kind of see they're a little bit the same and a little bit different. That is what numbers looked like to me. I was numerically illiterate and I did not have basic math skills, so I couldn't do basic adding and subtracting. And I, of course, couldn't get a handle on the basic money system because of that. It made navigating this realm very, very challenging. So my capacity to choose words and express myself verbally was also heavily compromised. Those are artifacts of the neurological attack. And I still deal with some of those artifacts. It's in the form of the seizures and epilepsy that for many years were uncontrolled and undiagnosed, but that as I became more self-aware and more self-empowered, I began to be able to do more research and really find out what was happening in my body, and then begin to choose to do things that are good for my health. And all of this has also been about my consciousness coming to integrate more with Earth as a planet. For a very long time, I will tell you that I have been approaching Earth as a stellar being, a visitor, a transplant, or an immigrant, really feeling like a fish out of water, and not understanding really until this year how profound and sophisticated Earth herself is. For a very long time, I presumed, quite hubristically, that the real sophistication is the stars, what's quote-unquote up there, and thought that really the only sophisticated consciousnesses and sophisticated beings that are in existence live on a massively different scale, like on a galactic scale, and do not live in the organic realm, like the realm of physical matter that eats and drinks and poops as we know it. However, in the past year, I have really had the profound experience of being fully integrated into this body. So the way that this consciousness trajectory went, for the first 18 months, I was barely hanging on by my fingernails, staying in this body. And then for many years after that, after I had the experience of getting my name and, living as Aurora, there were still, quote unquote, rooms of my house that I couldn't get into. They had, caution tape strung across their doorway, and we couldn't get in there to fix the, quote unquote, damage from the fire. And these are neurological aspects. So there were physical muscles of my body that I couldn't consciously move or use. I'm talking about facial muscles, like the expression muscles around my right eyebrow, and also some other muscles in my back and my legs. And this is because of neurological damage. I am happy to report to you that from working with a Reiki healer this year, here where I live in California, I've been able to fully integrate into this body as never before. Like if you can imagine a hand fitting fully into a glove, as opposed to in the past, a few fingers were bunched up and couldn't really make it all the way into the fingertips. And that experience of being fully in this body has given me a new and profound respect for Earth and the sophistication of planet Earth and the Earth physical body. I now see how amazing my physical form is, including all of the body processes that happen, digestion and bile and stomach acids and lymph, all of those things I now perceive on a deeper level and understand how important they are. And I'm also understanding earth, like understanding microbial life, how probiotics digest food in our guts, how probiotics in soil bacteria make nutrition available to the roots of plants, how chloroplasts within plants work in order to perform really the miraculous activity of transforming photons or energy, pure sunlight, into physical food. It's manifesting non-physical into the physical. Those are all earthly processes. So I am now respecting that Earth and the physical bodies that we inhabit are incredibly sophisticated. Earth is sophisticated, Earth is alive and conscious and is a dreamer dreaming a dream. And the natural world that we see around us is very, like an artist has created it. It's very intentional. It's very beautifully put together. And I have so much more respect for it. This is, of course, after 14 years of being here. So it's also like saying for many years I was an immigrant or a transplant to a place where I didn't quite speak the language. I didn't quite know how things went. And now I've learned more about the language and culture, and I feel a great more ability to respect what is going on here and what is being experienced and expressed here on this level of reality. Because remember, where I'm coming from is a place where I remember connecting directly to the sun and to the stellar network in order to receive all of my information and nourishment. And that is why when I came into this body, I thought that I was in heaven. So when people ask me, Aurora, where are you from? Jokingly or seriously, or what planet are you from? I used to have a community access cable show called Planet Aurora. But I'm really from heaven. And heaven I define not as the biblical Christian literalist, white fluffy clouds filled with long white-robed angels and the place where, quote-unquote, only good people go. To contrast, it is a hyperspace realm, a collection of floating consciousnesses of beings whom have cultivated their consciousness to the point where all of their chakras are in perfect alignment with the source. And that is where I come from, and I'm still connected there. It's an otherworldly realm, and consciousness may occupy that realm. And it is not a clank-clank metal spaceship, although it is a vehicle for transporting consciousness from one realm to another realm. And also, I did not have these answers when I first came into this body. When I first came into this body, I just hit the ground running, and I really had to figure things out. And again, not having math skills and having a lot of neurological damage and not being able to see clearly. These were big challenges. So, for example, my eyesight had changed quite a bit. The person who used to have this body only needed glasses, corrective lenses, sporadically. Their eyesight was about -2 diopters, and overnight, because of what happened with the body and energy systems of the physicality that I inherited, the eyesight decreased by 2 diopters. So, -2 is not that difficult, and you can still see pretty well, but you might need glasses for things like driving or, reading faraway street signs. But at -4 diopters, it was very difficult to see. I couldn't really see people's facial expressions, and I couldn't really read street signs or see the details of life. So for about the first 4 years that I was here in this realm, my eyesight was very blurry, and my experience of the world was similarly unfocused. You're not on an equal footing with other people if you cannot perceive their facial expressions. And it's also similar to the experience of an infant. When infants are first here and are still developing their perception, at first they cannot see and perceive clarity and see all the details of the world. There's just everything in the world, the massive sensorium. And my experience was very similar to that. So, of course, when it was possible, I got corrective lenses. I got glasses and later got contact lenses. And boy, what a change in my ability to perceive and understand things. And also, this has all been about me learning, and my growth has been accelerated. So, the things that it might take a human infant 5 years to learn, I might have learned in 5 weeks. All of my learning was truncated. And I, of course, now am quite adept at math. I want to share with you a little bit about how I learned math. So internally, in my neurological and consciousness structure, the visual aspect of perception and understanding was still very strong. It was not damaged. So I told you that as soon as I came into this body, I was drawing and making these complex patterns. I didn't know anything about geometry or numbers or measure anything. I did it all freehand, and I simply filled up so many notebooks, just massive amounts of notebooks, page after page, drawing these patterns over and over. And they're the same patterns that I currently use in my artwork. However, now I use them consciously. I know what I'm drawing, and I'm also able to use words, verbal linguistics, and the flapping of my moving mouth parts to describe to other people what I'm actually painting pictures of. Because for a long time, I would draw these pictures and I would show them to other people, kind of like pantomime, like, here, I drew this thing, I want you to look at it, expecting that the other person would understand that I've got secrets of the universe here that I'm sharing. And sometimes I would be met with a blank stare or sometimes a polite nod. And I started to understand that other people weren't getting all of the information that I was attempting to convey in these pattern drawings and in these paintings. And also, I began very early on in my tenure within this world to create sculptures. I would take paper and fold it because I was trying to understand the flying rainbow lasagna, and I hadn't yet fully manifested that concept. It was something that was deep inside of me that was still percolating outward. And it took about 2 years for me to really make a physical flying rainbow lasagna. And the way that I did it, I say it is very similar to if you were like an early Stone Age person who was just given a shirt. And you're like, okay, this shirt, it's made of something, it's got this strange shape, it's got these 2 holes here and this 1 hole here and this big hole here. How does this fit? What is this made of? How do I make another one of it? So you could cut it apart and lay everything flat and look at how it's made. Then you could lay those flat pieces as a pattern on a new thing and put it all back together. That is what I did with the flying rainbow lasagna. I made it by making paper cones and cutting them apart and gluing them back together and somehow shifting it all around until it looked right to me. And I did that process a lot. Like, it took many, many attempts. And then eventually I had it and I understood it, but I didn't know how I had made it. So I took it and I cut it all apart and I laid it out flat and I looked at what it was made of. And then I could figure out more the elements that it was made from and how to put it together. So eventually I figured out the steps to making the flying rainbow lasagna. Like, first I would take a shape like this and then add another shape like this and then twist it into a shape like this, and then it would be the flying rainbow lasagna. But one moment while I save my work. That was the physical manifestation. The non-physical creation of the lasagna was an event. It was literally a visionary experience because it occurred on October 8th in 2001 in that experience of the previous occupant dying, the body being saved by that net of consciousness, the grace of God, and me coming in to occupy this body. All of that was part of the events of the creation of the portal, which I call the flying rainbow lasagna. And I created it in 2001 in a moment. It's not like I thought about it, I drew pictures of it, I made rough drafts. It wasn't like that at all. It was created instantaneously, with no forethought, with nothing. It was simply created spontaneously so that I could still exist, because it was either that or non-existence. This is why it is so special and why I have stayed in existence and maintained my capacity to speak and share the information with others. Because this is the alternative. You're being inoculated with a new idea that means you don't have to die. You can go through a lasagna-shaped portal and go into another realm and extend your trajectory of consciousness and have a completely new experience, which is what I've been doing over the past 14 years. And I like to tell this part of the story too. When I created the flying rainbow lasagna in hyperspace as part of this immense set of epic events that have been going on for, let's say, billions of years, these events have been unfolding. And I found myself in the crossfire of, we could call it a battle, even though I don't really like to use all of this, the words of the military and of war and of conflict to describe what is really an event of consciousness and spirituality and consciousness unfolding. But what I experienced was definitely a violent attack. So I will say that in this event, it was very violent, and it was like a dualistic battle between divergent forces, forces of consciousness and forces of darkness, or anti-awareness or anti-consciousness. And I was in the midst of these two opposing forces. And my options were to no longer exist, to die, to be unmade, or to innovate. This is what I'm talking about when I say that our imagination, our capacity to create, this is not only the strongest muscle you have on your body, it is why it is so profoundly and unbelievably valuable to be in a physical container and have access to life force, as opposed to being something that is like a technological machine made out of microchips that is filled with electrical energy. When you're connected to life force, you can innovate. You not only can make a new baby, out of your womb, or make new cells as your cells replicate, you can make new ideas. That is what I did. I took the language of vibration, the language that I teach about in my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, the language that I use in all of my paintings. I call it the language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone, because music is in there too, but I've been understanding it as music much later in my journey. I took this language of vibration and I created an original paragraph using the syntax of that language. And the original paragraph is the flying rainbow lasagna. Okay, so when I created that, all of the beings that were there, all of the consciousness entities in hyperspace, everything paused and they turned and they looked at me, and these are kind of the rules. When you create something, you get to name it. And they're like, well, you made it, you name it. And I looked at it and the clock is ticking, quote unquote. I'm like, it's a flying rainbow and then lasagna, because the edge is curly like a lasagna noodle. And I will tell you that that name has simply stuck, because I tried later on to think about some very serious sounding name or more scientific sounding name or something that would be different, and yet I couldn't rename it. It simply is what it is. So the flying rainbow lasagna was incepted, it was created as a totality, and it was named, and it is what it is. I can't make it any different. It's kind of like when you have a baby. The baby is its own thing. It has its own identity, and you can't change it to be what you want it to be and for it to conform to your ideal of what it should be. So again, it took me many, many years to understand what the flying rainbow lasagna was and the effect that it was having on the genes of the container of consciousness that I'm currently using, this physical body. By my stellar consciousness coming into this physical form, the cells of the body had to adjust. That's why this grace of God had to be placed over the body. Otherwise, the cells would have just self-destructed. They would be like, we can't deal with this level of having to change. This is too great of a leap for us to have to make. Essentially, it was going from being based in a physical, dense reality to being based in a less physical, less dense reality. The cells of the body are used to the world where, yes, you eat physical food, you grind up pieces of body with your physical mouth parts and put it into the cauldron of your belly and digest it probiotically. However, we are now moving into a realm that is a less dense realm, where through different changes in shifts in the programming of our consciousness or the structure of our belief system, we can change the physical cellular body to now use sunlight as its primary source of nourishment. So for me, I'm in transition, as is the rest of the world. I know I was very disappointed when I learned I couldn't just eat pure sunlight because I thought that I was instantaneously going to be in this beautiful heavenly realm. I didn't know that I was in transition. I've always known that it has been my mission to bring together two divergent, seemingly divergent, or formerly divergent realms, the physical and the non-physical, or the realm of matter and the realm of pure thought slash energy slash consciousness slash quantum possibilities. I come from that realm. It's an abstract realm. I can't get this into people's minds and consciousness enough. If I were to draw a picture of what I look like in the place where I came from, it would look like my paintings. It would look like, a geometric kaleidoscope, quote unquote, of rainbow colors. It would not look like two eyes and a face with arms and legs. The anthropomorphic filter hungers and thirsts for the one-faced, two-armed, two-legged form that it can say, I see a person there. So this is also part of the bridge of consciousness, creating a bridge of understanding of people that come from the denser realm of eating dense objects and expecting consciousness to come in a container that is anthropomorphic, one head, two arms, two legs. And transitioning into understanding that consciousness can come in other formats that are abstractions. So first we recognize there's the consciousness of other animals that are mammalian or insectile or whatever. Then we can understand the consciousness of the planet. The planet herself is alive and conscious. And then we can start to say, wait, our sun is also alive and conscious. And then we can also say, wait, the galaxy within which we are submerged is also alive and conscious. Not everybody is there yet. So I am personally, and we are all, as a collective consciousness whole and as a planetary whole, and even as a solar consciousness whole, we are all on a trajectory of raising our consciousness. So my personal journey has brought me into this level of density, and my personal journey is affecting the world around me. This is appropriate. People have sometimes asked me, Aurora, why did you simply not stay in hyperspace and wave your magic wand and poof, make everything better in the physical dense reality? And the answer is because it doesn't work that way, if only it did. In order to change a realm, you must be an occupant of that realm. Cannot simply rule from a distance, cannot simply be a far removed abstraction and send out directives to other people that actually experience the consequences of those directives. This has everything to do with taking responsibility for one's actions. So I'll also tell you a little bit about my trajectory of consciousness. I was active on Earth during the time of the fall of Atlantis. And many non-physical, extra-dimensional, non-Earth-based consciousnesses were interactive on Earth at that time. That was normal. It's like saying we currently have a global economy where you can live in New York City but have business connections in Europe and Asia and everywhere. So in the time of Atlantis, before the fall, it was normal to say you could live on Earth and have connections to other civilizations and other levels of consciousnesses that can either be in a far distant physical reality or a far distant consciousness reality. I lived in a far distant consciousness reality. And of course, I have a value system of unconditional love and free will and respect of other people. And I was also a person in charge of making certain decisions. And I understand that the decisions that I made had an impact on the levels of consciousness on Earth's surface. The decisions that I made had an impact on the events that caused really human slavery to end, because humans at the end of Atlantis were heavily mentally enslaved. Their minds were so controlled by an external apparatus that they could not even think the thought, my mind is controlled and I am a slave. If you could imagine a mind control broadcast like a giant cell phone tower that broadcasts the thoughts you're supposed to think, and everyone really being like zombie controlled slaves, That is what was going on at the very end. And I made a choice to destroy that apparatus, knowing that it would cause a fall of consciousness and essentially amnesia or a mind wipe. And I wasn't the only being on that, let's say, council that made decisions. However, I'm telling you, this is my story. It is all about taking responsibility for the choices and the effects of those choices that we make. So I understand now that it's like cutting the puppet strings. Cutting the puppet strings set the puppets free. The marionettes no longer had the overlords controlling them, but now the puppets weren't connected anymore. And this is known as the fall of consciousness. Humans are no longer connected to the source. Humans no longer have direct consciousness and the capacity to eat sunlight directly. Humans are no longer telepathic. Humans now must find nourishment by grinding up food with their moving mouth parts and putting it in the cauldron of their belly, pooping it out later. That's a big change. It's a big shift. My experience here as Aurora is the corrective experience. I am like the second aspect of the parentheses. I'm completing this aspect of the trajectory of my consciousness. Why did I come into this realm? Why did I create the Flying Rainbow Lasagna? Why am I here teaching people about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna? And the answer is because the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is the new thing that had to be invented to fix what had gone wrong so many thousands of years ago. This new thing now allows humans on Earth's surface to genetically rearrange themselves into a better format. Transition back to eating sunlight, being connected to consciousness, seeing timelines and possibilities and probabilities, and ascending as opposed to dying. All of the things that I teach about in my online class, all the things that I model and embody in my day-to-day life, and all the things I speak about on this broadcast, these are all the end result of sharing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna with everyone. It is not a proprietary concept that I keep only for myself or try to keep as a secret or patent it so that you can only have access to it if you give me money. Oh, no. I laugh at that. I'm here because I want every single person on earth to know about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and have access to it if they choose. So it has to be based in choice. It cannot be something that I impose upon everyone or anyone because that is not loving. It is loving for me to say, I offer you this option. I do not force you to do it. However, I also would like to use the analogy of music, because our genes, our DNA, is very similar to vibrating strings, like the strings of a guitar or a violin or what is deep inside of a piano. And these vibrating strings affect other strings even if they're not physically touching, even if they're not physically close. If you pluck a guitar string that is all the way on the right side of the guitar, it can make the guitar string that's 5 strings away vibrate. They're not physically touching, they're several inches away, and yet one string is causing the other string to vibrate. I am here submerged within this physical reality, and I'm wearing this cellular body, which I have changed and shifted into a new format. And I'm vibrating at a different rate. My genes are doing a new dance step that I call the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So let's begin the analogy here. Let's say that where I come from, the floating collective of non-physical consciousness in the stellar world, which I have also described as being a heavenly place, let's call that the symphony. And when you're in the symphony, it is a higher dimensional perspective of hearing all of the instruments or perceiving all of the instruments at once. It is a non-linear perception. So to contrast, imagine if you were to sit in a giant concert hall and first listen to all the violins play their part, then listen to all of the oboes play their part, then listen to the piano play its part. That is linear consciousness. That is what it is like when we are submerged in the physical realm and experiencing breakfast, then lunch, then dinner, then breakfast the next day. To contrast, living in the higher dimensional or hyperspace realm is like listening to all of the instruments of the symphony at once. It is the symphony of consciousness. So it is understanding that there are many things being perceived and experienced concurrently, and they are all overlapping, and they are all interwoven and interplaying with one another. Past, present, and future, all interlapping. Me and not me, all overlapping. Sorry. I meant to say all interwoven and overlapping. And first of all, the symphony, quote unquote, is only filled with highly trained musicians. It is not an improvisational drum circle that anyone may join. It is a higher dimensional realm of beings that have cultivated their consciousness to the point where all of their chakras are in perfect alignment, so they can hear the musical score of the cosmos, and they can play their instruments, and their instruments are in tune. Your instrument is your body. So we are talking about the non-physical energy presence of all of these consciousnesses is in perfect tune, and the format fits perfectly with the harmonic nested pattern of consciousness in the cosmos. And the symphony not only perceives all of these lifetimes and life experiences at the same time, like you're listening to all of the instruments at once, the symphony identifies with the symphony. All of those musicians are so perceptive of each other, of their experiences, of their energies, of their communication is so direct and nonverbal and instantaneous that it is as if there is no distinction between them, even though they are still individuals. This is the heavenly realm. It is a realm of pure collaboration. And do not mistake my term heavenly as being biblical literalism, because it is not. I came into this realm as a musician from the symphony in order to teach this new dance step or this new song called the Flying Rainbow Lasagne to the people that are here on Earth's surface. So everyone here also has an instrument, except not everybody's instrument is well tuned. Most people's instruments aren't well tuned. Almost everybody here has some form of a disease. Almost everybody here has either a disease or mental discomfort or lacks vitality or is engaged in the cellular aging process. All of these things are symptoms that show that a person is not in proper alignment. Your chakras are not in proper alignment, and you will eventually die. And the idea is that by learning a new dance step with your genes, you don't have to lose vitality. You don't have to gradually become more and more decrepit as you chronologically move through time. That is what aging is. Aging is a program of your mind that you have been taught by other people. I'm teaching you a new program. You don't have to cellularly age as you chronologically age. You don't have to lose vitality, become more and more decrepit. You don't have to develop diseases or a sense of being not comfortable. Those things are all aberrations, aberrant, something that shouldn't exist. And death is the ultimate aberration, is the ultimate behavior that should not exist. We are meant to ascend. We are meant to be conduits for consciousness that are consistently connected to the source or the origins of where our vitality and creative energy come from. We're supposed to have access to that while we're submerged in the physical realm and send back real-time broadcasts of our experiences here, and then completely transmute our physical substances that we've used while we're here. And that is what ascension is. It is like using your physicality as the fuel to jump from this quantum level to the next quantum level, from this electron shell, this level of excitation, to the next highest level of excitation, or to exit this reality through the tiny wormhole that I often draw in my artwork, that the path of least likelihood leads you through that wormhole. It's the path at the very center of the time vortex, like the center of a bullseye. By aligning all of your chakras with that center, You are aligning with the source. You are, first of all, reducing friction. When we think, verbalized conscious thought, I'm not talking about what it is like when you meditate or when you are in bliss or when your consciousness is in divine harmony. That is when you soak up vitality. I'm talking about conscious verbalized thought. All of the friction that we experience during the day is all or are all of these thoughts, whether they're intrusive or whether they arise. We are perfect transmitters when we do not have thoughts, when we are allowed to move thoughtlessly throughout our existence. And I've described in other broadcasts how the implanted human operating system, aka the human mind, it's first of all a hacked operating system, and how the constant internal verbalizations act as a type of screen, a consciousness screen or a filter that prevents people submerged in the physical realm from effectively connecting with consciousness that is in a less dense realm. And this is a genetic problem and consciousness and energetic problem. And the solution is the flying rainbow lasagna. So the flying rainbow lasagna is a hypertorus. It is the portal that I created when a regular torus, the regular shape of a human energy field, is placed in a higher dimensional state. And when that happens, we gain an additional degree of freedom. That means instead of being like an ant or a caterpillar that is linear, stuck to the surface of a two-dimensional leaf, you're now like a butterfly. The butterfly can jump off of this leaf and jump directly to the next leaf. It doesn't have to crawl all the way down the stem, all the way along the ground, up another stem, and then onto the leaf. I'm talking about lifetimes here now. I'm talking about an integration of consciousness across many lifetimes, and that you do not necessarily have to, quote unquote, crawl back down the stem, go back to the soil, go back to up another stem and crawl out the end of the leaf in order to reach the next leaf. You can flit from moment to moment and lifetime to lifetime. This is what the experience of hyperspace consciousness is like. It is a non-linear experience. So, Birth of a New Dimension, this radio show, why I do it, it is all about preparing human consciousness, Earth surface human consciousness, for interacting with beings that exist in a vastly expanded reality, and their consciousness operates according to very different rules. And I, of course, had to learn the rules of the place where I have been navigating. So just to give a little bit more wrap up on my story, I eventually formed my own understanding of numbers and math that is based in visuals, because my visual centers of my neurology have always been undamaged. And I could see circles coming together and creating proportions, and understand numbers as these nested proportions. Basically, the first time I was ever shown a tape measure and how the numbers got bigger as the tape measure got longer, I was able to begin to understand numbers according to a visual sense. And I applied that visual sense to numbers in a very adept way that eventually turned into the system that you see in my artwork. So all of my artwork is calibrated. I said when I first got here, I just did lots of drawings by hand, and I was just really externalizing what was inside. And I'll also tell you that if you ever look at a little 2 or 3-year-old and they're drawing with crayons or colored pencils and it just looks like they're doing a lot of scribbling, they're not. They are organizing their neurology by doing those drawings, because I understand that's what I was doing. And the drawings eventually became highly organized, and eventually I self-educated and I learned more about math and geometry and read and went to math conferences, and now I know all about math. The way that my mind works, though, is still visual. I don't do equations in my head in the way that one probably was taught in elementary school, the way that most people were probably taught in elementary school. I envision packets, like packets of 10, and the packets of 10 are divided into packets of 5, and I visually see them coming together. And it is probably impossible for me to translate it into, for someone else to understand it. However, I have found a way to compensate for the aspects of the house that were destroyed. And this is the secret of the flying rainbow lasagna, that whatever is the obstacle, you can jump up and around it. If there are blockades on the road, if the neurology is not passable, like if you can't get there directly in a line, you can jump up and over. I do this all the time in order to get around the damaged areas or the areas that were damaged within my own brain. I don't go in a linear fashion from point A to point B. I flying rainbow lasagna from point A directly to point B. We bend and fold time and space so that I can do these things. And this is, I like to joke, I like to say, I'm a walking, talking impossibility. And it's true, because theoretically, this body shouldn't even be walking around. This body shouldn't be able to speak, or to perceive, to be perceptive, to be able to share what I see and paint it as a painting. All that I do, all of that is really a miracle. And I don't use that word lightly, because theoretically, this body shouldn't even be able to be here. And having access to my faculties and to be able to do this artwork and to share the flying rainbow lasagna concepts with people, all of that is quite unlikely. It's an example of how very unlikely things can happen. And keep that in mind, that when each one of us is faced with this ultimate challenge, you can choose the path of least likelihood. You do not have to do what everyone else says is the inevitability, which is to hit the membrane of death and have to circulate back and try again. You can do the least likely thing, which is to align your core with the source and the destination for consciousness and find the wormhole that leads to the next highest level of reality. So this is my mission. This is why I am here, to share with as many people as possible the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna, that it exists, what it is, and how to apply it to your individual life and your personal energy field. And I have already shared the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna with the planet. Yes, I speak telepathically with many different things. It is possible to do that. Things that are tiny and microscopic on a minuscule scale, like microbes, or things that are macroscopic, like the planet or the sun or the entire solar system. Yes, it is possible to have conversations on many scales. And I have taught planet Earth herself about the flying rainbow lasagna. And she is utilizing this new dance movement in order to jump up and over the pre-programmed limitations that have been holding her back for thousands of years. Because the limitations in human consciousness, what humans can conceive of and what they can do with their neurology, has been limiting the planet. Not just in the sense that, humans can only conceive of a resource-based economy where you dig coal out of the ground and then burn it, and you can sell coal to other people, or gold, or diamonds, or whatever it is. Like, all of that literalism has really hurt Earth. Earth is like, can you please come up with a more creative economy that doesn't involve you digging things out of my skin at great expense and harming the balance of gases in my atmosphere? Earth has been limited also by what human consciousness can dream. Humans have been submerged within a very violent and self-destructive dream for the past 10,000 years. And it has not been a dream that is about self-empowerment and self-cultivation and equality and unconditional love. And those are the beautiful values that our planet actually espouses. I told you when I first came here, I condescended to Earth. I had thought Earth was not a very sophisticated place. I thought that Earth consciousness was not very sophisticated. And I looked around and I, bolstered that opinion by really seeing evidence of a totally barbaric human society. And it took a long time and many years and greater perception on my part to be able to understand that Earth, the planet herself, is a very sophisticated artist of consciousness, and that humans have been out-of-tune musicians, Your bodies are literally out of tune, like if we were trying to play a wonderful song on the guitar, but someone has twisted all of the knobs so that all of the wrong notes are coming out. So first up, it is necessary to retune the physical instruments, and next up, it is necessary to learn how to collaborate with other musicians. And this is what we are talking about. Each person, it is necessary to heal your own body and your own emotional presence and spiritual connection to the divine, and become an empowered divine co-creator. No longer a passive victim. You're not a victim of your genes. You do not have to believe in genetic fatalism. You can now understand that epigenetics is a possibility, where you can choose which aspects of the genetic code are exacerbated and which are hidden. Identical twins do not develop identical diseases, even though they have the same raw materials. It's because of lifestyle and consciousness and emotions. So you're not a victim of your genes. You're not a victim of your timelines. It is not that something is written in your fate or in your destiny that is inescapable. I have really embodied that. I've proven with all of my life experiences that I have a powerful, like a pencil with an eraser, and I can draw what I wish in life, and I can erase and edit what I wish to do in life. So we are very powerful consciousness on a trajectory that has an imagination. As I stated, the creative capacity, the capacity to make something new. It's like having a magical pencil that you can use to draw your way out of any situation. So I'm sharing all of this with each of you, each one of us. We are all like souls on a migration. I sometimes speak of sea turtles or Canada geese on our migration. And most of these animals that make a long migration do not do it alone. They work together. They co-inspire, they support one another, and we are on a planet where our souls are about to make, or we are undergoing this soul migration. The planet herself is on a transition and a trajectory of transition, and I myself am doing so, and all of the cells of the planet's body are doing the same thing. This is what ascension is. So when I first came into this body, I thought I was instantaneously going to be in this new heaven on earth realm. I didn't know that it would take time. But it's a good process, and it can be done joyfully, and it is done with many other people. So thank you for being here and creating this heavenly realm on